My parents publicly embarrassed me at a family gathering while asking for money, but their plan backfired spectacularly when three other people decided to sue them. I'm a 33-year-old man who recently attended my cousin's wedding, where an incident involving my parents unfolded. During the reception, my parents and I don't have the best relationship, and we avoid talking unless absolutely necessary. The root of the tension is my younger brother, Jack, who's 29 and has always been the golden child. Growing up, nothing was ever his fault, and he got everything he wanted, which was not the case for me. As he got older, his arrogance and entitlement only grew, so we're not in contact at all. I cut ties with my parents years ago when they refused to help me with college, leaving me to figure everything out on my own. These days, we manage to remain civil at family events, but that's about it. As for Jack, we don't speak at all, not even in passing, and honestly, I'm fine with that. He's not someone I'd care to have a conversation with anyway. He's a man-child who still lives with our parents and spends most of his week playing video games with his online friends while downing cans of beer. A few days ago, I attended my cousin's wedding, and there my relatives and I were just sitting, chatting, and drinking after the ceremony. As usual, out of nowhere, my family approached and joined the conversation, which I found a bit strange because they usually try to avoid me. But I didn't think much of it, and it wasn't like I could tell them to leave me alone because there were many people around, and it wasn't a private conversation. Once they sat down, the conversation suddenly turned to me. When my dad asked how things were going at work, I'm a banker and recently received a significant raise along with a promotion. I celebrated with a couple of friends by going to a bar last weekend. But that's not my family's business, so I told him it was going well and left it at that. However, my parents weren't willing to let it go. My mom then asked if there was anything else I wanted to share with the family. I told them no. Then my dad said to cut the act and mentioned that he knew about the promotion and the raise. I was a bit surprised but didn't feel comfortable discussing it with so many relatives sitting around, so I told them I didn't think it was any of their business and tried to excuse myself to go to the restroom. Honestly, I just wanted to get out of there. However, my dad told me to sit back down so we could talk about this as a family. When he said that, I got upset because I didn't consider them my family at all, and I was pretty sure they didn't consider me family either. They proved it when my dad said that despite earning so much, I couldn't contribute and give something back to my parents, who had worked so hard to raise me and give me everything I wanted as a child. Now that they were on the verge of retirement, I was turning my back on them and being incredibly ungrateful and selfish. All my other relatives were either looking at their phones or the floor because they knew this wasn't a conversation they wanted to be a part of. It was a clear attempt by my parents to humiliate me and pressure me into giving them money, and I knew why they needed it too. You see, my brother doesn't have a job and still relies on our parents to support him and his lifestyle, which isn't exactly affordable. He wants to party and drink with his friends almost every weekend, and he wants to buy every new gadget because he fancies himself as some kind of tech genius or whatever. These things come with a cost, which my parents are probably struggling to handle. They're both nearing retirement and need to start thinking about life after that. They can't keep supporting my brother forever, and I knew they were trying to humiliate me in front of our relatives, so I would feel embarrassed and agree to send them money all so they could continue spoiling the golden child. But I wasn't about to fall for it. Even though I felt pretty embarrassed, I decided to fight back and treat them the same way they were treating me. I called them out and mentioned how they laughed in my face all those years ago when I asked them to cover my college expenses. Back then, they told me they only had enough funds for one of their kids to go to college, and that wasn't going to be me, so I had to take care of myself. Believe me, they really laughed when I brought it up as if I'd made some kind of joke. But I guess it was fair, because that's what I really was to them, a joke. Now, seeing that I was earning and my brother wasn't, they wanted me to contribute to the family. I knew this was just a way to keep funneling money to my brother. So I brought up that incident and told them they hadn't spent a single dollar on me beyond what was necessary. They only let me live in their house and provided for me until I turned 18, which was the bare minimum they could do for me, and they didn't do it because they wanted to, but because the law required it. They needed to stop acting like they did it out of kindness instead of obligation. I didn't even realize it, but I got a bit emotional while talking about it and had to rush to the bathroom so I wouldn't break down in front of them. When I came back, the crowd had dispersed and no one was sitting in that area, so I left and went home. I tried not to think about it for the next few days, but then my brother reached out and told me something that left me thinking. Apparently, news of our confrontation at the wedding had spread among our relatives. Unfortunately, it reached some people my parents wouldn't want to find out about, a big secret of theirs that I had to cover my own college expenses. They had borrowed money in the past from a couple of relatives, claiming they needed it to cover college expenses for both my brother and me, and they'd promised to pay it back in a couple of years. But now, several years have passed, and they still haven't paid back that money. Every time those relatives contacted them, they claimed they were still struggling financially, even though they weren't and were actually quite comfortable. They were just too stingy to pay back the borrowed money and were using it all to fund my brother's lifestyle. Now, my brother told me that those people found out about their lives because of what I said at the wedding, and 3 people have filed lawsuits against my parents, demanding they pay back their money. They hadn't done so until now because they believed my parents were struggling and didn't want to add more problems. But now that they knew the truth, nothing was stopping them. However, my brother wanted me to talk to them and convince them that I had just been lying to look good at the wedding because I didn't want to admit I'd been a bad son in front of so many relatives. He wanted me to persuade them to drop the lawsuit so our parents could figure out a way to get out of trouble. I thought it was a ridiculous idea and refused, but now he and my parents are demanding that I get them out of this mess because I'm the one who got them into it. So, am I the bad guy for telling my relatives the truth about how my parents didn't pay for my college? Update 1. I blocked my brother and decided to post my side of the story online for everyone to see, just in case they had any more tricks up their sleeves. I had a feeling they'd try to play the victim, so I got ahead of it. I don't feel bad about it because I'm just telling people the truth. It's possible they borrowed money from people who aren't even related to us, and they also deserve to be informed in a way. I'm just doing good for the world and looking out for others. My parents and brother have each other to lean on, unlike me, because I pretty much always had to fend for myself in that house. So now, they'll know how I felt. I can't even believe my brother called me just to try to manipulate and guilt-trip me into lying, thinking I'd cover for my parents. And it worked. To be honest, even while making that post, I knew deep down that most people would agree I did nothing wrong, and the responses to my post only reaffirmed what I already knew. So thanks for taking my side and not letting me doubt myself.